going to look at this book. This book is available on our website right now, and our website is www.writefromtheheart.org. Our shop is right there on the main page. This book just came out. It's also available on Amazon, and I will put the links in the comments when I get a chance. I can't type and show you the book at the same time, but we're going to take a look inside at the elements that are in this book so you can kind of see what we have. This book is designed for middle school and high school students. At Write from the Heart, we offer online writing programs. We do composition as well as literature classes, and this is the handbook that we use for all of our classes. It is also good for a student who is in 4th or 5th grade. There are activities available in this book that would help your child if you're looking to take writing classes at a later time. This is something good to help prepare your children. So if you look inside the book here, you can see that there is sections. There are sections for each section of the writing process. We have planning your writing, parts of a draft, voice techniques, and then we go into the writing styles. I did want to talk a little bit about voice techniques. In this book, we focus a lot on voice techniques because our philosophy of writing is that we believe that every writer has a voice, every writer has something to say, and our job as teachers, as parents, is to help them use written communication to become better writers, to express their voice. So in our voice chapters, we'll go over exactly what these chapters look like. In each section, there are several chapters, and in our voice chapters, we talk about how to create your voice, the elements of your voice, as well as tone, point of view. Those are the 5 parts of voice: personality, tone, point of view, vocabulary, and syntax. So we go over what makes up your voice, and you can see here at the end of the chapter and at the end of every chapter, we highlight key terms. We ask a couple comprehension questions. There are several things that you can do to practice with your writing, and these are generally short answer kind of practice things. And then the applications are at least 2 writing activities. One's usually a paragraph and one's an essay, and that's at the end of every chapter. So in our voice chapters, we talk about voice, we talk about how to play with voice and describe, and you can see that there are examples here in a different font. We have professional examples of playing with voice, and then we also have student examples of ways that students have used these techniques to talk about their voice. So voice is a big part of both our classes and my philosophy as a teacher, that we need to teach kids how to use their voices as writers. Writing is not a boring subject. Writing is interesting. Writing is full of details. It's the reason why we read stories, so we talk about descriptive details, which is usually where a lot of people stop. They say, oh, just describe what happened. But there's a lot more that you can do with a voice. You can talk about inner ideas. These are things like monologues in a play would be an inner idea, but there's other kinds of inner ideas. There are inner ideas of characters. There's inner ideas about what someone might have been thinking that you can do in a research paper. It's more of a hypothetical example. For example, here's an inner idea that a student did for a research paper about Walt Disney. I know some of you might not be able to read it, but their description of inner ideas says, the small, colorful room in Walt Disney's house was very quiet. There was a large desk where Walt Disney was sitting. Imagine, a faint scraping sound of his dull pencil danced on a rough piece of paper. He drew a circular head, a round nose, 2 small eyes, a long tail, a short, slim body, and finally big black ears. Walt had finished one of his most famous cartoon characters, Mickey Mouse. Perhaps Walt thought, and here's the inner idea, perhaps Walt thought, it looks pretty good. I wonder what I should do with it. Maybe I can turn it into an animation. I wonder if people will like it. And that's an example of a student who imagined what Walt Disney might have thought when he created Mickey Mouse. And adding something like that is going to make your research paper much better, much stronger, and much more interesting. So that's inner ideas, and then we also talk about manipulating time in papers, in research papers, as well as creative writing. Obviously, in creative writing, we slow time down. A minute could take pages and pages, or a whole summer could take a few sentences. But we also do that in research papers, and we don't talk about that a lot with our kids when we're talking about research papers. We are, a lot of times we're talking about facts and research and finding things, but talking about it in terms of time can help kids figure out what facts they need to include in a paper and what facts they don't. If you're talking about somebody's life, you might only spend a paragraph in your paper about their childhood, but if you're reading a book, like a biography about them, that might be chapters and chapters of the biography that they read. So teaching a child how to speed time up and condense information is a great way to help them figure out how to use their voice and how to choose the details carefully that they put into a research paper. So that's our section on voice. And then after voice, we talk about the different styles of writing. We start with creative writing styles, and we talk about narrative, and you can see here that we have a chart that talks about the way that a plot goes in a narrative story. We talk about setting, we explain exactly how to write a narrative, and then in every section of the writing styles, we have 2 student examples. In this case, we have 2 short stories from students, and then at the end of each chapter, again, we have activities where we have the key terms, comprehension questions, practice, and any of the ones that are with student examples, the practice questions, ask you to answer questions in the sidebar next to the student example. And in this case, you can see the sidebars right here, and these questions are asking things to help the student identify where and how they put in the elements of this paper. So for example, these questions say, who is the main character and what was their problem? Label the elements of the narrative in the story. Circle 2 uses of figurative language. Mark 1 example of inner thoughts or inner dialogue. So it's showing them, through asking questions for them to answer, exactly how that writer put those things into their paper. And it does that for every type of writing. So we have narrative, and then we have memoir. We talk about how to write a memoir. It's a lot like a narrative, and then we have 2 examples of the memoir. We have a chapter on poetry. If you're not sure how to teach your child poetry, we talk about writing poetry and how to do that. And we have lots of examples of poems, as well as student examples of poems. You can see there's a lot of fun poems from students that we've done in our classes. And then there are some questions about those. And then in section 5, we get into the academic writing styles. So these writing styles, and this is where this book comes in handy if you're doing papers even for other classes, is if a teacher says, well, write me an informative paper on a historical event. Well, how do you do that? What are the elements of informational writing or expository writing? Well, right here, it explains exactly what is in expository writing, how to write an expository paper, different kinds of expository writing, and again, we have student examples of how to do that. We talk about analytical writing, which is process essays, as well as literary essays. There's examples here. Cause and effect essays. We explain exactly how to do that. And we talk about literary analysis and the difference between literary analysis and book reports. And then again, we have sample examples. And this, again, can be used as a curriculum. You could go through every type of writing, and at the end of each chapter, for example, at the end of the comparison chapter, we have applications, and one application writing sample tells your student, write a paragraph where you compare one of the following, either talking versus texting, winter versus summer, handwriting versus typing, and they could just write a paragraph. And then there's an essay topic next, and it says, imagine if you were given $200, write an essay about 2 different things you could do with that money and compare and contrast them, revealing your decision at the end with a specific thesis. And if your child's read this chapter, your child knows exactly what a specific thesis is, where it goes in the paper, and how to do that. Then we have a chapter on persuasive writing, and it explains the elements of persuasion, how to have backing. It talks about appeals like pathos, logos, and ethos. Again, it has 2 student examples. And then it has activities, and these are broad broad assignments, the applications in particular. It says choose a problem that's affecting your local community right now. So that allows your child to do an assignment that fits in with your curriculum at any given time. We also go over essay tests. These are tests that your child might have the opportunity to do either on a standardized essay test, like the SATs, if your state requires any standardized writing tests or English tests. I'm in Pennsylvania, and students have to do the PSSAs, which are the standardized tests in Pennsylvania, and there's a writing section. So if your child's never done a standardized writing prompt like that, this chapter is perfect to talk about exactly how to do a standardized essay test, what a prompt is, how to write a quick outline, what exactly they're looking for, and it even has tips about managing your time properly and how to deal with a testing situation where they're writing under pressure, because that is something that a lot of students don't get a chance to do. And then our 6th section here is revising and editing. I believe that writing is not a one and done type of thing. Writing is a process. You should be writing several drafts, and this explains why. This explains why you need to revise your draft, how to revise your draft, and there are several chapters here. There's a chapter on self-revision, and then there's a chapter on revising with a partner. And the nice thing about this section is we use the same student example throughout the process, and we start with the draft, and then we show how she revised the draft with underlined questions and self-reflection that she did. And then the next chapter we talk about revising with a partner, how to find a partner, what kinds of questions you should be asking a partner, and how to revise a partner's paper correctly or well. And then it shows the exact same paper with the partner's answers there. So it gives your student a chance to see exactly how one would go about revising someone else's paper. So it's not only teaching them how to write, it's teaching them how to revise well. And then it talks about editing, which is editing for grammar. And it talks a little bit about grammar and how to edit and how to revise it. And the grammar section I'll show you in a second. There's also a section about research. And this section is very in-depth. It talks about how to find sources, where to find sources, how to use the internet effectively, how to use the library effectively, and how to keep track of your sources. And then there's a chapter about evaluating sources. How do you know if you have a good source? How do you know if your source is biased? How do you know if the information that you found in your source is correct information? What way can you find good information or true information? And it talks about how to do that. And then it talks about how to use your sources, how to put your sources in a paper, how to cite your sources. This book does use the MLA citation format, which is what humanities uses generally for writing. So it talks about how to avoid plagiarism, how to cite your sources, and the connection between works cited as well as your citations in your paper. It gives an example of a research paper. It talks about how your citations work, how to put them in, formatting your works cited page, why you need a works cited page, and how to format your in-text citations. So it is quite in-depth with research. There is a section on grammar. This grammar section includes all of the pieces that most middle school and high school students would need to know for grammar. It starts with parts of speech, and then it moves into sentences. It talks about sentences and parts of the sentence, and then it talks about sentence errors, how to find errors in your paper, how to find fragments, wordy sentences, making sure your subjects and verbs agree. And then it also talks about commas. There's a pretty big chapter on commas. And then it talks about other types of punctuation, including capitalization, dashes, ellipses, parentheses. It goes into all of those examples. And we actually have a grammar book that goes along with this. This is our grammar practice book, and this book is set up exactly to match the chapters that are in our resource guide. So it goes through exactly the parts of the grammar guide. So you can actually buy both the grammar book and the resource guide together on our website at www.writefromtheheart.com.